horror.
Yes, that's it's the Bluetooth case right here. Bluetooth charging case.
Charging case.
Yep, very good. Good job. Mm-hmm.
Teacher.
Yeah.
Charging case in there.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Mm-hmm. All right. Welcome to the MasterMind Library. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and your host of the MasterMind Library, the home of the MasterMind Book Club. And we are here with one of my assistants, Trigger Thomas. Say hi, Trey. Say hi. Say hi. You normally want to talk, but now you don't want to talk. All right. So we've been reading from ImHotep, the Vizier and physician of King Zoser. Now he chooses to want to talk. Yes. The Bluetooth? No, I'm not wearing the Bluetooth today. Okay.
Bluetooth in there, Dada.
All right, let's go ahead and get back to what we're doing. All right.
Okay.
Okay. So we're reading from ImHotep, the Vizier and physician of King Zoser, and in today's episode, we will be focusing on chapter 2. Oh, this is going to be some powerful material, and I'm extremely excited to be able to read it with my children here in the room. Huey and Sincere right there, and Trey obviously is sitting on my lap. So we are going to go ahead and dive right into this, and let's get on over to... Okay, all right, we're working on it. I'm trying to get there. We got to get to chapter 2. Okay, we are there. Let's make it a little bit larger for everybody.
Yeah,
we're making it just a little bit bigger so everybody can see it real easy, okay? That sound good, Trey? Okay, let's make this one a little bit larger as well. All right, there we go. Okay. ImHotep is contemporary of King Zoser. ImHotep calm down. ImHotep devoted his life to various activities which may be grouped as follows: Grand Vizier, architect, chief lector priest or Keriheb, sage and scribe, astronomer, magician / physician. A few details will be given under each of these headings. ImHotep as Vizier. The office of Vizier to the ruling pharaoh was one of high dignity and responsibility. The occupant of the post was a sort of Joseph, whose jurisdiction extended over the various departments of state. Although no specific duties of the office under King Zoser are on record, many details of the duties of viziers under later Egyptian kings are known, and we may fairly conclude that similar duties were carried out by ImHotep. The following list of titles in itself indicates the manifold responsibilities of the office: Chief Judge, Overseer of the King's Records, Bearer of the Royal Seal, Chief of all works of the King, Supervisor of that which heaven brings, the earth creates and the Nile brings, Supervisor of everything in this entire land. Amongst some of the departments of his office are mentioned the judiciary, the treasury, war, army and navy, the interior, agriculture, and the general executive. A prodigy of efficiency must have been required to carry out such multifarious duties. The name of the vizier was sometimes actually followed by the royal salutation: life, prosperity, health. And in his judicial capacity, he was regarded by the people as one who could not do wrong. 3 of the greatest sages and authors of proverbial history, ImHotep, Kijimni, and Ptah Hotep, held the office of Vizier in the Old Kingdom. An interesting incident associated with Imhotep and King Zoser is recorded in what is known as the Legend of the 7 Years Famine, which describes a period of terrible starvation caused by the failure of the Nile for 7 consecutive years to reach its usual flood level and thus to irrigate the land sufficiently. The result was that grain grew very scarce, and almost everything needed for food came to an end. The famine was attributed to the king's neglect to pay due honor and worship to the god Khnum, who was one of the deities controlling the source of the Nile. The king, in his distress at the calamity which had befallen his country, turned to his counselor Imhotep and questioned him about the birthplace of the Nile and the god who ruled there. Unable to answer the king's questions at once, Imhotep requested leave of absence that he might consult the sacred books on the subject. After a brief absence, he revealed to the king the hidden wonders, the way to which had been shown to no king for unimaginable ages. On receiving this report, King Zoser at once wrote to the viceroy of Nubia, a nobleman called Meter, asking for his advice and assistance in abating the grievous state of affairs. I go back, he wrote, in my mind to the days when I had an advisor, to the time of the gods, to the ibis god, Thoth or Thoth, and to the chief Keri Heb, priest Imhotep, the son of Ptah, south of his wall. He then proceeded to inquire what god or goddess presided over the Nile and could replenish his granaries with grain, so that the deity might be visited and propitiated. Eventually, the king paid a personal visit to the temple of the god Khnum in order to make prayers and supplications before him, and to propitiate him with offerings. In response, the god Khnum appeared to the king in a dream and promised that the Nile should rise and never fall again. It shall spread its waters out and cover all the land satisfactorily. Plants shall bend beneath their produce. Want shall cease, and the emptiness of the granaries shall come to an end. In gratitude for Khnum's intervention, King Zoser made a decree and endowed the temple of the god with lands and valuable gifts. Gold, ivory, ebony, spices, precious stones, and woods were all tithed so as to supply rich offerings for the temple. This is the prototype of temple endowments, which were doubtless used for the manifold wants of the god, for the maintenance of a sacerdotal staff, and for building operations. B. Imhotep as architect. Imhotep, the chief of all the works of the king, was also a notable architect and in all probability designed for his royal master the well-known step pyramid of Saqqara near Memphis, and familiar to every tourist who ascends the Nile. This pyramid, a transition between the mastaba tombs of the earlier kings and the true pyramid form which is met with later, was constructed by the superimposition of 5 successively smaller mastabas on an original large one. The east and west sides of the base measure 396 feet in length, and the north and south sides 352 feet, while the height was about 195 feet. The 6 gigantic steps measure in height 38, 36, 34 and a half, 32, 31, and 29 and a half feet, respectively, while the width of each step is from 6 to 7 feet. Within the building, which was constructed of blocks of limestone, the halls and corridors were lined with blue and green glazed tiles of inlaid faience, bearing the king's name and titles. This pyramid is the earliest large stone structure known to history and was designed to become the tomb of King Zoser. And here goes the step pyramid. There it is right there, Trey. See? That's the step pyramid of Saqqara. Step pyramid of Saqqara. Very good. Good job, buddy. Very good. All right.
Yeah.
The step pyramid of Saqqara is further an index of a high state of civilization. There must have been wealth in the pharaonic exchequer, stable government by the viziers and other officials, experience in the organization of labor, aptitude in the keeping of complex accounts, technical skills in the quarrying, dressing, and transportation of stone. In all these indications of economic prosperity, we may see in part, at least, the genius of the Vizier, ImHotep. Nor can we doubt that the triumphant completion of the first pyramid, the earliest large monument constructed of hewn stone, must have paved the way for the yet mightier pyramids that were soon to follow. The name of ImHotep is also associated with the first temple of Edfu, which was said to have been constructed according to a plan dropped down from heaven to earth near the city of Memphis. The master craftsman was ImHotep, the son of Ptah, the great god of Memphis, and father and son united their powers and produced the first temple at Edfu in one of the earliest periods of Egyptian history. The present splendid temple was begun during the reign of Ptolemy III, Euergetes I, 237 BC, and finished in 57 BC. The inscriptions in the temple describe ImHotep as the great priest ImHotep, the son of Ptah, who speaks or lectures. As we shall see in greater detail farther on, ImHotep appears to have been the second member of a long pedigree of architects, commencing with his father Khanifer, cf. Appendix C, and ending with Khnum ibn Ri, who was chief minister of works for the whole country, an architect of Upper and Lower Egypt from the 27th to the 30th year of King Darius I, ca. 490 BC. C. ImHotep as chief lector priest, or Kariheb. ImHotep held the important office of Kariheb, Tep, or first lector priest. The temple of Edfu. There it is right there, Trey. Temple of Edfu. Yep, Temple of Edfu. Good job, buddy. Thank you. This capacity, his duty, was to recite from the holy books. And since according to the Egyptian faith, these religious texts possess magical powers, the common people regarded the Kariheb as a magician. The Kariheb took an important part in ceremonies known as the liturgy of funerary offerings, dealing with the presentation of gifts to the dead. The formula which was pronounced over each element being supposed to change it into a divine and spiritual food, which was partaken of by the souls of the departed. The material elements of the offerings were eaten by the priests and by the relatives of the deceased, who were thus brought into communion with the blessed dead and with the gods. Although the formulas in the liturgy were recited by the Kariheb priest, who held in his hands a roll of papyrus and directed the assistant priests, most of the ceremonies were performed by the Sim priest, assisted by several ministrants. In the other series of ceremonies known as the opening, the mouth, the object was to restore to the inert corpse the functions of which it had been deprived by death and embalmment. The mouth was symbolically opened that the mummy might speak, and the eyes touched that they might see. A bull was slaughtered in order to provide food, while other ceremonies were intended to enable clothes, unguents, and C to be used, in fact, to cause the mummy in all respects to resemble a living human body. The end in view was also aimed at by the recitation of appropriate formulas and by touching the mummy case with a wand shaped like the hieroglyph. When these ceremonies had been performed, the body was lowered into the grave and the approach closed, a funeral feast being held in the antechamber of the tomb. Here also, the Keriheb was responsible for the order of ritual, although he had various assistants, especially the Sim, who was in many respects played the principal part. In brief, the Keriheb was held in great honor throughout Egypt. By the common people, he was regarded as the mediator between the king and the unseen powers of the universe, and was supposed to influence the final destinies of the dead. There is an interesting reference to Imhotep in the ritual of embalmment. After the statement that the deceased sees Amen, the text goes on to say to him, "Thy soul unites itself to Imhotep, whilst thou art in the funeral valley, and thy heart rejoiceth because thou dost not go into the dwelling of Sebek, and because thou art like a son in the house of his father, and doest what pleases thee in the city of Thebes." D. Imhotep as sage and scribe. Imhotep enjoyed the reputation of being one of the greatest of Egyptian sages. His fame for wisdom made so deep an impression on his countrymen that it endured as a national tradition for many centuries. As regards his literary activities, he is said to have produced works on medicine and architecture, as well as on more general subjects, and some of his works were extant at the dawn of the Christian era. His proverbs, embodying the philosophy of life which experience had taught, were handed down from generation to generation and were noted for their grace and poetic diction, their author being described as a master of poetry. We shall see later on that his eminence as a man of letters led him to be recognized as the patron of scribes. An interesting song, or rather dirge, known as the Song of the Harper, has survived, in which the names of Imhotep and Hordedef are linked together, and in which these two sages dilate on the uncertainty and brevity of life, and enforce the doctrine that as man is so soon gone and forgotten, he should enjoy his life to the full. The philosophy is that of those persons who in all ages of the world have said, "Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die." This poem was evidently a favorite. The oldest version that has survived was written in the tomb of the Theban king Antuf, near the figure of the harper, and was doubtless sung during the funeral feast for the entertainment of the guests. The object was to remind them of the brevity of life, even while they were enjoying it. The following version conveys a good impression of this poem and indicates the feeling and rhythm met with in Egyptian literature, although there are no rhyming lines. Song of the House of the Blessed King Antuf, which is written in front of the harper. All hail to the prince, the good man, whose body must pass away, while his children remain for aye. The gods of old rest in their tombs, and the mummies of men long dead. The same for both rich and poor. The words of Imhotep I hear, the words of Hordedef, which say, which what is prosperity? Tell. Their fences and walls are destroyed, their houses exist no more, and no man cometh again from the tomb to tell of what passeth below. Ye go to the place, ye go to the place of the mourners, to the bourne whence none return. Strengthen your hearts to forget your joys, yet fulfill your desires while ye live. Anoint yourselves, Clothe yourselves well. Use the gifts which the gods bestow. Fulfill your desires upon earth. For the day will come to you all, when ye hear not the voices of friends, when weeping avails you no more. So feast in tranquility now, for none taketh his goods below to the tomb, and none cometh thence back again. It would, of course, not be fair to judge of Imhotep's philosophy from so slender a basis as that presented by the Song of the Harper. As his reputation was so enduring, there were doubtless precepts and proverbs enjoying a higher morality. His name is sometimes linked with those of two other famous Egyptian sages, i.e., Kijimni, who lived in the reign of Huni, last king of the third dynasty, and Ptahhotep, vizier of King Asa of the fifth dynasty, both of whom have bequeathed precepts of singular beauty. We append one gem from the instruction of Ptahhotep, which teaches the virtue of humility. If thou be great, after being of none account, and hast gotten riches after squalor, being foremost of these in the city, and hast knowledge concerning useful matters, so that promotion is come to thee, then swath not thine heart in thine own hoard, for thou art become the steward of the endowments of the God. It is delightful to have voices speaking across so long a span of years and recalling the philosophy held by the wise men of an ancient nation, whose glory has now departed. E. Imhotep as astronomer. If the references to Imhotep in Hermetic literature can be trusted, he was also interested in astronomy and astrology, although no special observations are associated with his name. Seth gives various references to that literature, showing that Imhotep was reputed to have been associated with the god Thoth or Thoth, also known as Hermes, in astronomical observations. Doubtless he was a believer in the influence exerted by the heavenly bodies on the welfare of men, as was the fashion in the pharaonic period. The faith that stars in their courses powerfully affected human destiny was well nigh universal, and this faith led to a close study of the movements of the heavenly bodies, of eclipses, of the precession of the equinoxes, of occultations of the planets, of the length of the sidereal year, as well as to the identification of the sun, moon, and stars with the principal deities in the Egyptian pantheon. Both the sun and moon were the objects of divine worship by the royal family and the nobles as some of the grandest of natural objects. No wonder what the fundamental laws of astronomy were discovered. No wonder that the fundamental laws of astronomy were discovered and brought into intimate association both with national events and with the ordinary occurrences of life. As Diodorus Siculus says, there is no country where the positions and movements of the stars have been observed with such accuracy as in Egypt. Registers in which these observations are recorded have been kept during an incredible number of years. F. Imhotep as a magician physician. Imhotep enjoyed a high reputation both as magician and as physician. He was a famous priest and magician of Memphis, while his subsequent apotheosis as the god of medicine testifies to his skill as a healer of the sick. We may briefly refer here to the twin offices of magician and physician, leaving a fuller discussion of the subject to an excursus on early Egyptian medicine. Magic and medicine were closely allied in the time of the pharaohs. Magic is generally regarded as the older of the two and never lost hold on her offspring. By magic actions are implied such actions as persons perform for their own or others' benefit, and which demand certain mysterious and miraculous powers for their performance. According to the Egyptian belief, wizardry could work all kinds of wonders which were not possible by simple means. the operations of magic related to all the events of daily life. It might be prophylactic of evil, curative of disease, prognostic of calamity, sometimes benevolent towards others, at other times malevolent. One common characteristic was the use of a mystic, incomprehensible gibberish to convey an impression of wisdom behind it. It is difficult to draw any hard and fast line between religion and magic, since the latter was in large measure a form of applied religion. Practitioners of magic kept a box of materials and instruments always ready so as to apply their art to any special circumstances that arose. In the Westcar Papyrus, allusion is made to a wonderful feat of magic performed by the chief Kariheb or lector priest of King Zoser, who, it has been suggested, may well have been Imhotep. The full details are not told, but the allusion occurs in a speech made to the king Khufu, Cheops, by one of his sons as having occurred in the days of King Zoser, and performed by his chief lector priest. Although Imhotep was a noted magician, it appears that medicine was the mistress he most zealously wooed. It is his eminence as a healer of the sick that has given him imperishable fame, and that led eventually to his deification. For a time, he was court physician to King Zoser, whose vizier he had been. Evidently, he moved in the highest social circles. Doubtless, magic and medicine were closely associated in his treatment of the sick, the remedy most suited to the malady in question being selected. Magical papyri are leavened with medical prescriptions, while medical papyri, such as the Eber's papyrus, are constantly interspersed with incantations. Unhappily, nothing is known of his special work as a physician. The important office of Vizier must have added prestige to his name and inspired confidence in his patients. But the fact that he later on received divine honors, a rare event except in the case of a king, proves him to have been a man of rare distinction, a fine type of scholar physician. He evidently rendered service both to the bodies and spirits of the sick and afflicted to whom it was his privilege to minister. As regards Imhotep's relations, a few details have come down to us. His father was a famous court architect or master builder named Canifer. This we learn from an inscription found in the Wadi Hamamat, a valley leading from Coptos down to the Red Sea, and giving a genealogical tree of the ancestors of the architect, Chinem Ebri, Kanum Ibri. Much less is known about Imhotep's mother, Kri Duonk, and his wife, Ron Penafret, Rempt Nefret. After his apotheosis, his mother, Credonk, was looked upon as the mother of a god, and was represented with a human head, adorned with the hood of a vulture, and with double feathers. His wife, Ronpret Nofret, likewise, after the apotheosis of her husband, became the wife of a god. The Egyptians appear to have found no difficulty in regarding Imhotep as the son of the god Ptah, while his mother, wife, and other relations were but ordinary mortals. Such double filiation was possible since deities could borrow a human body so as to enable a woman to bear them a son. Imhotep could thus be the son both of Ptah and of Canofer. We have no information as to the length of Imhotep's life or the date of his death. As far as history goes, he was a man of high and unsullied character, with a wide outlook on life, as well as a tender heart towards suffering humanity. We may therefore well be confident that when, after a career devoted to the public service, to the healing of the sick, and to his many other interests, he was at length laid to rest, a great concourse of mourners joined in the funeral procession and accompanied the mummy to its last home. Moreover, with the knowledge we possess of the funerary ceremonial in the early dynasties, and with a little imagination, we can readily picture to ourselves the various episodes on the way to the vast necropolis of Memphis. After the embalmment of the body, a process which occupied several weeks, the corpse would be placed in a four-sided, somewhat plain coffin, which was then covered with flowers and ferried across the Nile on a richly decorated bark, accompanied by several other boats filled with friends and relations. Meanwhile, the funerary priests, i.e., the Keriheb, made offerings and burnt incense before the mummy, and conducted his official recitations and invocations to the gods. The river safely crossed. The coffin, together with its bark, was transferred to a sledge and drawn by oxen to the already constructed mastaba, every stage of the journey being accompanied by a complicated ceremonial. Egyptian mourners were highly demonstrative, and in the case of Imhotep, doubtless there was pathetic wailing of his friends and relations, as well as of the sick and afflicted patients to whom he had formerly ministered. Especially affected would be the women, who with bare breasts uttered impassioned cries, slapped their faces, and scattered ashes on their heads, everything being done to glorify the deceased and to indicate the grievous loss and solitude of the survivors. Imhotep's mastaba, which will doubtless someday be unearthed, was probably situated in the desert just outside the city of Memphis, near the Serapeum and the modern village of Abusir. It was therefore also close to the famous pyramid which the deceased had built for his patron and royal master Zoser. Near to this spot was later on situated the Pium Hotep Si Ptah, the temple of Imhotep, son of Ptah, which the Greeks called the Asclepion. The Asclepion. As we shall see in the next chapters, it was not Imhotep's destiny to lie forgotten in one of the numerous mastabas in the necropolis of Memphis, in which repose so many notable Egyptians. A far higher distinction awaited him than any pharaoh could confer, for posterity raised him to the rank of the Egyptian deity of medicine and gave him a place among the immortals whose name will be held in everlasting honor. Non moritor cujus fama vivit. All right, and that completes chapter 2. So one of the things that I do want to say, let me change the page real quick. This is some good stuff right here. One of the things that I do want to say is this. All right, I'm gonna bring y'all to this page. Yeah, we're about to bring them to this cover page real quick. Because I want to.
This cover page.
Yes, to the cover page, exactly. Yep. Yep, that's the cover page right there. Good job, buddy. Yep. All right. So I want to be very clear. I want y'all to see this. Okay. As y'all can see, the title of the book. You can see the You can see the author, right? You can also see the year, right? So we need to be aware of who may be writing this book. Okay, I haven't done much studies on the author, but there's some things that I'm seeing in this material that are red flags, right? So you're talking about Imhotep as a magician, right? You're talking about Imhotep in a couple of other ways that don't really fit. And then you're talking about magic, but you're not talking about alchemy. So you got some pieces to the story, but you're missing a whole lot. So these are things that I would say y'all should pay attention to. If you are one of the ones who are listening along with the book, if you're reading along with the book, make sure you pay attention to these key words that are being used, because the ancient people weren't magi. They weren't magicians. They practiced alchemy, transcendental science. The Europeans call it magic. So these are things that I would say make sure you're paying attention to and reading these books, because this is a way to properly discern absolute truth, and to properly discern relative truths, and to properly discern erroneous information. Things that are either opinion, just not fact at all, or whatever it is that it may be. But discernment is important, right? So these are things that are super, super important. So, matter of fact, let's go back to the table of contents real quick. Okay, so we've got the vizier, the architect. We've got the chief, lector, priest, the sage and the scribe, the astronomer, the magician, physician. Okay, these are things that I would really say go back over, because I'm not aware of any doctrine that comes from the ancient people of Kemet. Matter of fact, there's another thing that he said in there. He said that astrology or astronomy, its oldest practice is from Egypt. That's not true. Now, a bunch of European scholars may have said that, and that's maybe what this author is, because he's using footnotes, so he's giving attribution. He may be giving attribution to to a bunch of European scholars, but I would imagine the vast majority of scholars who come from the other schools of thought understand that some of your oldest references of astrology and astronomy come out of Mesopotamia. A bunch of them come from the Aztecs and the Incas. I do believe that their studies of astronomy and astrology predate those in ancient Kemet. And keep in mind, if Thoth's story is true, right? If Thoth, Jehuti, however you want to say his name, Hermes Trismegistus, if his story is true, he comes from Atlan. He doesn't even come from he doesn't even come from ancient Egypt or ancient Kemet. He builds ancient Kemet. If those stories are true. Because the story, as the story goes, Tahuti, also known as Thoth, also known as Toth, also known as Hermes Trismegistus, he comes from Atlantis, and the tis is there because of the Greeks and the Romans, the Latin language. Atlan. He doesn't come from Kim. He builds it. He goes there and he builds Kim, according to the story. So these are things that I would say that we would need to pay attention to, because these things that are written, it may be fact in it may be fact, the information in Western academia. In the Western schools of thought, this information may be fact. Well, it is a relative truth at that point, right? But then there's the actual truth, right? So I would say, as I read these books, listen for these kind of things. Really listen for them, because there's a lot of scholars out there who would say that Mesopotamia is where you get the start of astrology. But he writes in this book that has a copyright of 1926. He says in this book that astrology has its earliest its earliest its genealogy, so to speak, in ancient Kemet. And he doesn't even use Kemet. Kim is not even a word that he's using so far in this book, which is a problem to me. Like all of that, all of those things are important when you're talking about the ancient times, using the ancient names. Like if I'm talking about ancient Africa, I'm not going to call it Africa. I'm going to call it Alkebulan. If I'm talking about ancient Italy, I'm not going to call it Italy because it didn't have that name then. It might have been the tribe de Medici, the tribe de Roma, the tribe de Naples, right? Each of these are tribes of people. These are families that had control. Tribes throughout Germania, all the tribes throughout what we call Britain today, England, Ireland, Scotland. So they didn't have names like that back then. They had different names. So if I'm talking about something ancient, I'm going to use the ancient name. He's not using the ancient name in this book. All of these are red flags. So hopefully you all are using this portion of episode 69 to help you in your journey with other material. Because it's not just this book that has red flags. There's a bunch of books that have red flags. Doesn't mean we shouldn't read them. No, we should read them. We should be reading the false information just like we're reading the true information so that we can have a full picture and not have a portion which could provide deception. Understand that if you want to properly discern absolute truth, you have got to have an education in the falsities and the erroneous stuff of life, as well as have a great education in absolute truth. You got to have a full circle picture. So this is part of the reason why we read the books that we read in the MasterMind Library. And we also do it with Trigger, Sincere, and Huey here. Sometimes Elijah is in the room as well. And what they're doing is they're learning how to discern truth. Oh, you can have a very, very beautiful quality of life if you can discern truth in real time. Because as we have heard pastors say, I believe it says it in the Bible. I don't remember exactly which verse, but it says that the truth shall make you free. Well, that's one of the things in the Bible that is true. Understanding truth, walking in truth, living truth makes one free. But to understand truth, you got to see the lie. You got to see both sides. Just like if you want to have some love for the sun being up 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, every day, you got to have some hours of darkness. And then now you appreciate the light. But you have a full circle picture. Well, what is that called? A day. It's called a day. We call it a day. 24 hours. And we're appreciative of these days because of those cycles of positive and negative, male and female, sun, moon, sleep, rise. You got to have duality. You got to have both. And then what happens is you're able to discern truth. So this is a great book. I think that there are some pieces in this book that I needed to receive. Clearly, my son needed to receive. My son over here, Huey, needed to receive. Sincere needed to receive. But we also needed to receive an understanding that we need to be careful who we allow to teach us about our ancestors. Allowing Europeans to teach us about our ancestors, it's not necessarily a bad thing. We just have to be aware that they might not understand exactly what they're talking about. They got a whole bunch of attribution, make no mistake about it. They got all these different authors who are respected, who they've read their material and they've quoted it. But that still doesn't mean that they know what they're talking about. Sometimes to tell a story, especially about someone as great as ImHotep, sometimes you got to have somebody from the bloodline doing that. And make no mistake about it, they're still here. You're looking at one. we've got to pay attention. So it doesn't mean you're not able to have Europeans teach you. So I don't even want to put that out there in the air. You can have Europeans teach you, but you've got to understand that there's portions of our story they don't understand, and they're not gonna understand anytime soon. So read the material that they put out, no matter how old or how new it is, because it's important to be informed. But at the same time, have proper discernment. Look within. Look inside of you to find the truth and to find the understanding and the answers. I was looking inside of me when I was reading about a magician. I was looking inside of me when I was reading about astrology having its start in ancient Kemet. I was looking inside of me, and that's how I was able to discern that these statements didn't make any sense. But this is coming from a very well-respected author, Jamieson Hurry, master's degree, medical doctor. And this is in the early 1900s. Oxford University Press printed this. This is help a person understand. There's a lot of people out there that don't know what they're talking about. Now, I would say this too. Even though there's a lot of people out there that don't know what they're talking about, we still need to listen. Every single lesson, every single message out there, there's a treasure embedded in it. So we have to be discerning of truth, but we also need to not necessarily take part in the lie, but we need to hear it so that we can put it all together and make the puzzle, the big picture. So I said a lot. Hopefully everybody was listening. And on episode 70, we're going to be diving into chapter 3 of ImHotep, the Vizier and Physician of King Zoser. And later down the line of the MasterMind Library, we're going to add more books in of ImHotep. So we're gonna be getting books from ImHotep that's from European authors. We're gonna get books from ImHotep that are from Egyptian authors, Northern African authors, South American authors, Asian authors, right? But we need a wide range of information about each of these topics to discern what is actually true and the patterns of these writers, the patterns of these press of Oxford University Press, Princeton Press, McGraw Hill. I mean, we can go down the list. Like we need to see the patterns of these printing companies, of these publishing companies, and of these authors. We need to see the patterns of the authors within their ethnic groups. Then we need to see the pattern of the authors of various sexes of female authors versus male authors. Like we really need to dive deep into this so that we can get a full understanding of what has happened, how language has shaped the reality that we live in today. Language has literally shaped the reality of how we live. This is the law of suggestion. I often talk about it. What we experience in repetition, we become. So once we understand the spelling, how do you spell the? THE? Well, what did you just do? You just did a spell. Well, you did it one way by spelling it. You did it another way by speaking the word. The. That's also spelling. But if I put a bunch of combination of these words together, they can get someone to do something. This is how the spell works, right? The strongest magic words that there are out there is I am. This is why you hear me say it so many times. Every episode, welcome to the MasterMind Library. I am. They call me Ferdinand because my name isn't Ferdinand. That's not my name. My name is I. My name is I am. Well, those are the magic words. No different than hocus pocus, abracadabra, voila. Those are the ones on TV. Abracadabra, hocus pocus. You know, these are on television magic words. But in real life, if you want to do a quote unquote magic trick, well, where's the magic done? You say I am. You write I am. Well, whatever you put after I am, you become. This is the importance of understanding language. This is the important. This is the this is important to understand suggestion. And these books have a whole lot of suggestion in them. And most of our movies and TV shows are built, are constructed, are produced from books. So if we don't get an understanding into these books, then what happens is we miss the understanding we are supposed to get from the television program or from the movie or whatever it is. This is all connected. And the books are super important to understand all of the connections, all of the connecting points, all of the routes to get from one point to the next. I'm really glad that I'm reading this book. This is my very first time reading ImHotep, the Vizier and Physician of King Zoser. I've never read it before. But I saw some things that were alarming today while I was reading. And it took everything in me to not stop and, and go ahead and be like, yo, I gotta stop reading this right now, y'all. I gotta tell y'all, like, it took everything in me to keep reading because I'm sitting there listening to this, and I'm like, man, this must have been a European who wrote this. Like I said, I've done no research on Jamieson Hurry. Haven't did any research on him. But what I would say is this: it wasn't too many brothers in America getting books published by Oxford University Press in 1926. So without me doing any research on Mr. Hurry, on Dr. Hurry, Dr. Jamieson Hurry, if you got a book published by Oxford University Press in 1926 and you was a brother, yeah, you had some major influence. You had quite a few people who bang with you, who rock with you, who you friends with. You got some friends in high places. Most of the people getting books published in 1926 from Oxford University Press, they look like Caucasians. And there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. But for us to have understanding as to why this information didn't make much sense to me when I was reading it, that's probably why. Mr. Hurry is more than likely a very, very talented, well, he's past at this point, but a very, very talented and knowledgeable person, more than likely super knowledgeable, capable person. There's certain things you just don't understand without being a part of the bloodline. It's how it's revealed in meditation. Imagination. Something that we usually laugh at when somebody says, yeah, use your imagination. Well, you tell a child that, you're not going to laugh, but you tell an adult that, they might be like, man, listen, imagination ain't going to get these bills paid, bro. But that ain't true. Imagination will get those bills paid, and imagination will get those bills paid much easier than however you're going about doing it right now. So we've got to build up imagination. I know I'm still going after I say, yeah, I'm going to let y'all go. I love these topics because we've been stuck as a people for a very long time. I'm not just talking about melanated people right now. I'm talking about mankind. If you're not in a bush society, you're more than likely in a civilized society, quote unquote, civilized society. And you live in a house or an apartment or something. You live in a neighborhood. That's been messed up for a long, long time. And this has everything to do with leadership and philosophy. And this is the reason why discerning truth is so important. Leadership and philosophy is the problem. Well, we need to fix it. How do we do that? We have to go to the spells. We have to go to the spelling. We have to go to the books. We have to go to the words. We have to get a full understanding of the power of the word. We have to understand the law of suggestion. This is how we solve humanity's problems. We heal the womb of the women. And then we have children being born that are balanced. Balanced children become balanced adults. And balanced adults will fix every single problem that we have in existence, no matter what it is. This is part of the reason why the book that precede that I read before ImHotep is Sacred Woman by Queen Afua. Well, why did I read that book? Because this is how we get to world peace. We get to world peace through understanding the spelling, understanding the suggestions, living in sacrifice, humility, respect, accountability, and whatever the fifth one is that I'm missing right now. And we do all of that while learning how our language is shaping our reality. It might seem like I'm all over the place, but I guarantee y'all I'm not. All of this is connected. Every piece of it. I am not rambling. I am trying to give y'all keys to your own kingdom. The keys to your own kingdom is literally maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice at the spiritual, mental, and physical levels. And as you go through those 7 subplanes of each great plane that's listed in the Kabbalion, we will be getting to the Kabbalion soon. But as you go through those 7 subplanes of the spiritual, 7 subplanes of the physical, 7 subplanes of the mental, you got to use maturity, accountability, responsibility, humility, and sacrifice to get through them. And as you do, you rise in magnitudal levels, spiritually, mentally, and physically. But you have to understand the spells to achieve that. You have to understand the material in these books. You've got to be able to read the Akash. You got to be able to read the real book of life. Well, it's inside of you. You got to be able to read that. You got to be able to interpret that. So this is why we use astrology. This is why we use numerology. This is why we talk about spells and spelling. This is why we use etymology. We use all of these to get to the core of absolute truth. And this is what we will be doing on the MasterMind Library. 69 episodes later, we're still doing the same exact thing, and we will always be doing the exact same thing. What we are here to do is to lead. We're here to lead leaders. My family is here to lead leaders. This is what we do. And as you continue to listen to the MasterMind Library podcast, you will see for yourself that the information that is presented here will lead you to absolute truth. Not necessarily the exact message in every book. No, not that. The discernment of the messages in the book. Because we'll be doing it together. I'm here with you. Comment. Throw some comments out there. I'll respond. Send me a message. Go to fhtii.com. Send me a message. Schedule an appointment with me. We will talk. World peace is going to happen. We are going to have that. That is upon us. But it requires every single family to have a base knowledge of these universal laws of nature, to ingest in nature, to have a certain type of love and reverence for nature. So I done said a whole lot, and Trey is over here sleeping. He's getting heavy. So I am going to get some things done. And I do want to say this: expose your gift.